Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Beyond the Sermon, coming to you from Smithfield, Virginia, the ham capital of the world. Very glad to be back with you. We had to take last week off for a variety of reasons. Life got in the way. I was on vacation, but tonight we're back with you, ready to roll, and we have our guest Avery Pino with us. We talk about some cool stuff. Tim is just itching.
Yeah.
Itching to get in here.
Who
The
gave
man
you
behind
3
the
weeks
voice.
off? Who? I did not authorize that. And I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to go back to that committee and reevaluate
Personnel.
that. Personnel.
I'll give you the number.
Yeah, 3 weeks off is a little ridiculous.
Hey.
I have to agree with him.
Yeah.
I've missed my friend.
All I'm gonna say is that it was supposed to be 4, but in my dedication to Beyond the Sermon and the great things that are happening at Smithfield Baptist, I am here a week earlier than I was supposed to be.
Huh?
Funny that, huh?
That is right. Who gets 4 months, 4 weeks off?
Hey.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's one of the few perks that pastors have.
But I will say, we've always talked about this, that now for you and I and mostly the staff here,
Yeah.
pretty much up until the end of the year, it's like go time for us
yeah.
because of just everything coming up between the
Absolutely.
picnic, Bible school, kicking off Awanas,
Absolutely.
Christmas, Thanksgiving. It's just like go time now.
And Easter is early this year. It's end of March this year.
So we're gonna have
So it's going to be non-stop shop from now
Yeah,
until
so-
like the end of March, 1st of April.
yeah,
So-
we always joke and say
Here we go.
after your vacation, it's go time.
Well, and Josh and I have discovered something. For those of you who don't know, Josh is our next gen pastor, so he handles kind of crib babies all the way to 18. And he's noticed that like his schedule and my schedule are kind of opposite each other. That I'm really busy from like now through Christmas and Easter, and his busy time on go time is summer because of all the summer camps and all the stuff he's got going on for the kiddos and the youth during the summer. So we kind of are opposite each other, which works out well because we can back each other up when something goes south. But yes, here we are. Thank you for being here, Avery. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it. We're going to have some good conversation tonight about discipleship and family relationships. And the minute I said that, our views just went right through the roof.
I'm a crack with Avery now. So,
Yeah.
Great.
So Avery we were supposed to be on last week, and we had some like just conflicts, babysitting. So who's babysitting today?
Nobody.
Oh.
Daddy's home.
Daddy's home.
Yeah.
Okay. So
There you go.
Yeah,
is-
he's got the little
home.
ones.
He's got the
Dad is
little ones.
babysitting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Max. Appreciate
Yes,
you letting
Max,
your wife
thank
out
you.
for the
But
night.
is it really babysitting if he's dad?
We always joke about that. Like,
Right.
I got to babysit the kids tonight. Yep. Well,
No, it's
they're
responsibility.
my kids. Oh, yeah.
I don't get paid anymore for this. In fact, they're eating everything I make.
I know.
Yeah, I have, like, a
And
team.
everything I'm not making.
I meant money. They're
Oh,
eating
yeah,
everything I
that's
make.
true.
Bear, is he
That's
still in
true.
the house?
He is.
He's got to be eating you out of house.
He
now,
is.
doesn't he? Because he's a
That
big
boy can put some meat away, let me tell
Yeah.
you.
And I've discovered this with Caden just turning
He's starting
almost
to eat a lot.
14. He's eating me out of house and home. He
It
eats
gets
everything.
worse.
It's ridiculous.
worse.
It gets
Yeah,
worse.
I'm not looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to
funny.
it. And Calvin can pack it away too for his size. That's my youngest one. He just turned 6, and he's like, "Where are you putting all of that, Sean?"
Yeah. Luke's
All
that
right.
way as well.
Yes.
So-
So everywhere we try to go, we try to stay with a place that has a kitchen, so we don't have to eat out every meal.
But you got a pretty funny. I've seen some pictures on the Facebook page
my,
about a
my
place.
wife is the local photographer in residence, I guess you'd call it, and she put stuff out. We had a good time. So what we did was, and we won't bore you with pictures tonight, but so what we did is we left here, Smithfield, Virginia, and headed south. And Ray and I gave ourselves 3 days to get to Houston, Texas. So we swung through Georgia, Atlanta, Alabama, got into Talladega, took some pictures of Talladega Motor Speedway. We're not huge race fans, but those who are in the congregation appreciate it. And then it was our second night looking for a hotel, and we didn't make the mistake we made the first night because we made sure we got our hotel before 2 o'clock in the morning. And so we made our hotel stop in Meridian, Mississippi. You ever been to Meridian, Mississippi?
I haven't.
There's probably a reason you haven't been to Meridian, Mississippi. And so we pull into town, and we find this hotel for $84. It's a good deal.
Okay.
And you know that old phrase, you get what you pay for?
Oh boy.
So I bring the second load up, because if you've ever seen the woods travel, we don't travel light. I bring the second load up from the car. As I'm coming in the door, my oldest Caden meets me at the door. He says, "Don't sit down on the furniture. Don't sit down on the furniture." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because there's unidentified substances all over the furniture." So needless to say, it wasn't clean. It just wasn't clean. So we looked at the refrigerator. I think my wife took pictures of the refrigerator.
I
It was
got
so
'em.
disgusting. And all rusted out, nasty, gross. Now the beds looked fairly clean. I mean, I think I didn't look too closely. Needless to say, no one showered that night. No, we didn't take much out of the bags, and we
Right.
got in the car and left. So I'm going to say now, for the record, I think the Wood family is now all in on Airbnb.
Good.
I think we're all in on Airbnb. There it is. You got it, Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you pull that up? There's the yeah. He's cycling through my wife's Facebook page. Can you post this? Yeah,
Yeah.
that is our hotel room in Meridian, Mississippi, and it's a gorgeous thing. I wondered what, and that is the microwave that was so inviting. You can notice that the knob is missing. It wasn't any better when you opened it up, and that was the freezer.
Hey, you had ice.
Plenty of ice. Yeah, plenty of ice. All the ice you could want. And you got anything else? Yeah. So there's the freezer and the fridge. Notice the beautiful rust there on the very bottom.
I see you put your leftovers in there.
I put my.
Did
yep.
you eat them?
I think those are my wife's leftovers.
Did she eat
I think
them?
she, I think she did.
I mean,
but-
they're all in a package.
yeah,
So.
yeah. But you see the fine display there. What else you got? Oh yeah, Kane was convinced this is where people came to hang themselves. There was just a random like hook out of the wall. We weren't sure what it was for. Didn't want to ask, but it was just
Probably
hanging
a good
there.
idea.
And this is us leaving, I believe, the Meridian Hotel.
The hallways looks nicer than the
Yes, oh, it absolutely does. And this is the. I might note to you that this is the second cart, I think, of stuff.
I love
that
Calvin's
we're-
face.
Yeah, he's ready to roll. Yeah, there's a typical Wood vacation right there. Takes an army to move 5. That's us getting to Louisiana. So we noticed, if you'll back up to the there's Calvi. If you'll notice, oh, you can't back up. If you notice the first picture, there was all those mirrors on the wall that we took our reflection in, and that led my wife to believe that what we'd really done is check into a rent by the hour hotel. That could not be confirmed or denied, but that was part of our
That one?
thoughts. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So to say it was a dive.
Did y'all sleep on the beds? Did
yeah.
y'all check them?
Yeah, we checked as much as
Jen
you would
did.
want to check.
I know she did.
You know she did.
Well, I do got one picture here.
Do you got the picture of the bear, and then we'll move on? Got the picture of the bear? So kid you not, I'll tell you the story real quick, and then we'll move on. We did a lot of really cool things. So we got into Houston. We went to NASA. One of the coolest things on the trip, the Apollo missions. Once they lifted off from Cape Canaveral, they were overseen by the NASA team in Houston, in the Johnson Space Center. And so we went to the Houston Space Center, and there in Houston, and got to tour some of the facilities. And they took us to the actual room. Now, I'm not talking about like a room they'd recreated. I'm talking about the room with the observation room for the families and the room, the original 1960s chairs with ashtrays, because you could smoke in every room, right? With ashtrays.
Wow.
The original. And sat in the room where they landed men on the moon. Sat in the room, not a recreation. It was the room. So where they landed men on the moon, and they got those 3 guys home on Apollo 13. The same place.
All right, what's your story on the bear? There you go.
So we made our way to my conference in Irving, Dallas, Texas, and then we made our way back to the East Coast. Total on the entire trip, 4,000 miles.
Ooh.
4,000 miles in the car.
I gotta ask you because you've done some long trips.
We have.
How many miles is on that van?
Well, we bought it at 54, I think it is. We've owned it for 4 years, and it's got 136 on it. So,
You put some miles on that thing.
yeah, we did 6,000 when we went to Minneapolis.
Oh, you
and back.
did?
Yeah. But, all right, so my
Wow.
wife and I were driving around. Actually, we were headed back to camp to pick up Calvin. So we made our way back to Asheville, North Carolina, for the kids to go to camp. So shout out to Camp Cedar Cliff in Asheville, North Carolina, right down the hill from the Cove, or the mountain from the Cove. And so she and I were out driving around, going to get Calvin back, and driving along Fairview Avenue, they call it, driving along, minding my P's and Q's, and Jen says, there's a bear. Now, this was not a remote area. To the left of this picture, there's a house right there.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a major road.
There's cars.
Yes.
It looks really close.
There's stuff everywhere. And is this the only one she posted? Because we got, there you go. So Yeah, he was just, and the amazing thing was, I guess it's a he, I have no idea. It was just minding his own business, wandering down the road.
So you thinking he's comfortable around humans probably? And that's
It certainly seemed that way. I mean, he was looking for a trash can to dig into. So he was so close to so many people. I mean, literally, there's a house here to the left, and it's a kind of a neighborhood. And so my wife calls 911 and says, I don't know if this is unusual here in Asheville, North Carolina, but there's just a bear just walking down the road. And so the 911 lady starts laughing. And she says, well, I don't have any idea if it is either. so she said, but I'll call it in. so there you go. We started with a sketchy hotel conference, came back and saw a bear.
That's awesome.
That's cool. But I will tell
Memorable.
you. Yes, we had an Airbnb in Asheville, and there was a swing set out front that Calvin loved.
That's
But
awesome.
yes, it was awesome. But after seeing the bear in the residential neighborhood, I started going out with him and sitting on the porch when he went out to
Yeah.
swing on the swing set, because they'd already told us in the Airbnb book that there were occasional bears. So I was
Yeah.
like, well, look, I love him. I'm not going to lose him that way. So I went out and sat on the porch with him.
all right. Well,
So there you go. Here we are, 4,000 miles later.
and you're back.
And I'm back. And I learned a lot. Conference was really good this year. The Church Network is a conference they put on every year. I tried to go just about every year, and they do a lot of conversations about church administration. Because you may not realize, but it's actually a lot of administration stuff that goes into running a church. Because we are...
You should get staff for that. To handle all that.
You're looking at him.
You should just preach.
You okay?
You should just preach.
Just
and-
preach, that's all you
and,
want me
and
to
do
do?
the beyond the sermon. That's all you should do.
That's all.
That's it.
I can't wait.
Not a bad gig.
Here we go. I know you and I've been talking, and we're looking to do the Easter sunrise service.
I'm going to throw this at you.
Yeah, see, Avery's excited about it.
That's kind of news.
Then you can do it.
I'm laughing because that
Yeah.
is shocking.
Yeah, well, sure.
It is very shocking.
You?
Yeah, Easter Sunday. If you don't know, the joke is that I don't like mornings.
No, he doesn't. There's no way.
That's an understatement, actually.
All right, so let's roll into this Sunday. So
This Sunday.
it's messing me up. I feel like tomorrow's Sunday because I took the day off for some things
you
going on,
slacker. See, you're fussing at me about vacation.
and it feels like it's a Saturday, and
Yeah.
I just feel
All
like
thrown.
yeah.
I will say though, let me just say this before I forget.
All right.
Not Sunday 2 days from today, not the 6th, but the 13th. That is the culmination of our VBS week.
Yes.
Because VBS starts Monday for us.
Yes, excited about that.
That is awesome. And if you have a chance to come into the church halls, which some of you do, some of you don't, they've done an awesome job decorating. And we have gotten, what's really cool is we have gotten decorations from several churches, both in our area, and I think even as far as like Tennessee, I think they went and got decorations. Does that sound right?
I know
to you, Tim?
he rode out to northern, out in the mountains,
Yeah,
like
okay.
Stanton and all
That direction.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it was several not in our community who gave up their decorations that they had already used this summer. So it's just an example of the church helping each other and us all being in the same boat.
And I
here.
was told
It really
that
really cool.
these decorations are already lined up to be given to another church.
Great. So just keep going.
It just keeps going,
Yeah.
which is
that's
really
awesome.
cool.
Yeah, so it's just a great way to see churches supporting each other. In fact, we were having the same conversation out, Avery, that all of our kids just church hop all summer long to the VBSs around community. You want to
Yeah.
jump in on that, Avery?
They do. It's fantastic. It's great to see that the church is not just four walls.
Yep. And we get to,
Yeah.
so my wife and Avery went over to a local church here, and half our kids were there. We
Yep.
had fellow teachers over there. Everybody was jumping. Some of our Awana kids were over there. It was
Absolutely.
awesome. So
It's a
just a
big
shout
community.
out. That's right, to the churches here in town, and encourage you to have your own churches make those connections. So, but anyway, where we're trying to head with this is that this Monday night we start our VBS. So of course, kiddos in your house are invited. But my real point is that the decorations are awesome, and the culmination of that is August 13th, and we only have one service that day. We have one service at 11 o'clock. We do have Sunday school beforehand, but the reason we're having one service is because that's the culmination of our week, and all of the kids will come that morning, and they will lead us through the gospel in song. They will sing the Lord's praises. They're going to show you the songs they learned. They're going to celebrate the Lord. It's the Bible that tells us make a joyful noise and to celebrate the Lord and dance with the modern day drum and
Yeah.
guitar. So we're going to have a good time with that 11 o'clock service. And so please mark that. But now this coming Sunday, you get yours truly after 3 Sundays off.
It's awesome.
was waiting for Tim. I said, I fed Tim a softball. He didn't even jump on it. Oh, there you go. He was trying to find his sound effect. I wondered why his mouth was shut.
That's amazing.
Yes, it is.
It is amazing.
Little
to have you back.
A little slow in the uptake. And I fed it right to him. And it was like this pause. I'm like, come on, Tim. So this Sunday, we are talking about Psalm 143. And there is way too much good theology for me to get into all of it, which I know will shock everyone. But we have a lot happening this Sunday. We got a missions moment. They're going to talk about the Bland mission trip in September. We've got a baptism at the 11 o'clock. Got all kinds of stuff.
Great.
So,
All right. Well,
that means I gotta talk less.
What are you doing? What are you preaching on? Because let's go beyond your sermon you haven't done yet. So let's jump in there and
Psalm 143.
yeah. What are you preaching on?
So why don't you pull up for me?
Gotcha.
We'll do just verses 10, 11, 12 is good.
All right. There you go. 10, 11,
And
12.
so it starts off here, and the reason I picked this hymn probably, I don't know, a year and a half ago or so was because I loved this call by the psalmist. This is a psalm of David. And I love this call out to the Lord of to teach me, Lord, oh God. And depending on the translation, you may get teach me, oh God, to do your will, for you are my God. And I love that because it's kind of the whole reason we do this tonight, is that it's just the understanding and the commitment to make sure that we have a heart that is teachable. And when Tim and I started about doing this podcast, gosh, it's been probably a year and a half ago now we first started talking about this. The whole idea was to give people an opportunity to be discipled, to grow in their discipleship, which just means to be a greater disciple of Jesus Christ, and to grow in their faith outside, as you said, Avery, the four walls of this church building. Because, more and more people are not connecting with a church building the way past generations have. And so this is using technology to be able to build people into greater relationship with Jesus. And I love this psalm in verse 10, 143:10, teach me to do your will. Not just like, Lord, I need this, so can you give this to me? And hey, I'll barter with you and maybe I can get it out of you. But here's David going to the Lord and saying, teach me. I want a teachable spirit. I want to learn. Show me how to do your will. And quite honestly, I think if the churches in our country and if the majority of the people in our pews would have that attitude towards the Lord, we would see incredible things happen. I mean, can you imagine our churches on fire truly going to the Lord and saying, I don't know what's going to be, but change is hard. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to teach me something, I'm probably going to have to change. So I don't really want to do it, but I'll be so committed to this relationship with God that I want you. I am opening up the door of my soul for you to come crashing in and to teach me something, even though I know it may call me to do something I don't want to do, learn something I don't want to learn, change in ways I'd rather not, give up things I enjoy. I mean, teach me what you want me to do. Teach me to do your will. And I think that can, especially to a non-believer or a new believer, that can be, well, heck, to any believer, that can be really intimidating.
Well, here's because my gears are going while you're saying this.
Great.
So, can it also, for example, this? You and I both know there's no way you're getting behind where I'm at right now and doing this.
No.
Could I take that the Lord taught me how to do this so we could bring this type of discipleship? I mean, are we more thinking along the lines of teach me about you?
Well, yes. The answer is yes.
All right.
I think this specific psalm is talking psalmist appealing to God.
Gotcha.
Teach me your ways. But it can't be divorced from what God has called us to do in our life and what he's called us and gifts he's given us, skills he's given us. So Tim has done awesome work behind the scenes, literally, both literally and figuratively here, behind the scenes to make all of this happen every week. I've done a lot of studying over my lifetime, just trying to be the best pastor I can be. Avery's right now studying to. So you're shooting for the LPN, right?
LPC.
LPC. I'm
Yep.
sorry. LPN's a nurse, right? LPC.
Yep.
Licensed professional.
Counselor.
Got it.
Is that an MD doctor?
No.
Will
It's a
you-
professional degree, but it's.
Will you go doctor next?
Yes, I am looking at getting my
Well,
doctorate.
that would be great because I need someone to
Not an
prescribe me some
MD. Not an
things.
MD.
An MD.
Well, can you be my supplier for
No.
any bacterial
No,
infection
no.
I might have?
No.
Jeez.
That doesn't do me any good.
I know. That's not my forte. See, and that just goes to, but that goes to explain too that
Absolutely.
we all have a place and we all have a piece in this. So your gift is being behind that board,
Yeah.
and his is not.
No, it's not.
You have to jump in quite so quickly on that one.
But my gift isn't the gift of gab either. So like him.
I love how his is a positive and mine is portrayed as a negative.
What gab? Is that negative?
Is where I come from.
Okay.
But you wouldn't be able to he wouldn't be able to use his skill if you weren't able to use your
Absolutely.
skill to get the word
Yeah,
out.
that's true.
So I think we all have our place in being taught and learning different things.
And that is a piece of
So-
discipleship too, right? Is knowing its calling, vocation. It's knowing what your skills, abilities, how God's made you to be who you are, to contribute to the building of the kingdom in whatever way. So making people healthier, emotionally, mentally, psychologically.
Yep.
Getting the word out through technology, talking about it. The gift of gab.
You're
I remember
offended.
that. I'm going to remember that. But just the idea that God calls us to do and use our gifts. So the sin here is when we do not do what God has called us or gifted us to do. And I think that, yes, you can learn all that, Tim, by opening up your heart to what God would have you be and what he'd have you do. So it says, you are my God. And one of the last points I'll make here, I'm going to have two more, is that you are my God. So all of this teaching, because we all three have kids. A lot of you guys have kids. You have to teach them things they don't necessarily want to learn, right? My now ninth grader is about to start school in a week or so, 2 weeks. And he's going to have to learn a lot of stuff that's not fun to learn. It's just not. You just have to go through the Latin of it. You have to go through the reading of the stuff you don't want to read to learn and to grow and to be a better person.
You're preaching. I got a 2-year-old. Try teaching him stuff that he don't want to learn.
There you go. Yeah. Nope.
Yep.
First word they learn.
He
right?
thinks anything's his. He thinks,
Oh, it gets better.
I know.
Yeah.
Or worse.
Hold on, Avery. You got older ones.
Yeah.
Do you prefer the 2-year-olds or do you prefer the where do you like them?
You know what? Every season's different.
It is.
And it's weird being in multiple seasons at one time. I have 5 kids, for those that don't know.
Yes.
From ages newly 5, she just turned 5, to 20. So I'm in several different seasons.
All at one time.
Yeah. I enjoy every single season. Yeah. I will say that sometimes in those toddler days, I'm like, whew, if you only knew right now. You're being prepared to stay awake for a reason because it doesn't change when they're teenagers. You're waiting for them to
Just
come
worry
home.
about them, right? Yeah, just worry about them.
I will tell you
Yeah.
this. One thing we've been blessed with extremely, and I know we're deviating here, but all 3 of my kids, like 12 hours of sleep, would go to bed at 7:30 and wouldn't get up until we woke up just about, what's between 6:30, 7. 7:30 in the morning, they slept.
Wow.
I did not have that blessing.
You didn't have that.
Me neither.
We got
Not that
lucky
blessing.
when it
Yes,
comes
you
to
did.
sleepy.
Yes, you did.
Like,
But don't gloat. It comes back around.
It ain't come back around anymore unless Judah decides to go rogue on me, and
Rogue.
he's doing great right now.
Good,
but
good, good.
my man will take him 2:30. What we give him up like 3 o'clock. He'll be ready to go bed at about 7:38, and he sleeps through the
Nice.
night.
Wow.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's good
So,
stuff.
but
All right,
go
so
ahead.
so as we deviate, let's come back around. We're good at that. So the way that we learn, the way we teach our kids, has to be done or should be done best in a relationship. We talked some about pre-show about relationships, and that while we're asking God to teach us things, we're doing it and asking and trusting that the Lord is going to teach us things within the relationship we have with Him. So meaning that He, as our Father, is going to give us things, yes, they're challenging, probably things that are hard, sometimes things that are difficult, sometimes things that we don't want to do, but they are for our good. And, there's a lot of apologetics and stuff in that, meaning a defense of the gospel. But all of the learning, David can call out, teach me to do your will, because he can trust in the Lord because of the relationship that God is his God and will do right and will do the things that David needs become the person God's called David to be. And that's the same call to us. I mean, if we go to the Lord and say, Lord, I'm going to lay open before you. You teach me, you guide me, you direct me. I'm going to do what you call me to do. We do that within the relationship. We're not doing it to some arbitrary demigod who's going to use it to hurt us or use it to smack us or to abuse us or all of those things that we might, and we'll talk some more about this later, we might actually associate with our physical earthly father. You know, if we lack in a good relationship with our father, it may be hard for us to come to that situation of teach me, Lord, when we don't really know how to trust a father because our earthly experiences have been so bad. And that's where we're headed later on tonight.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I want to cherry pick something.
All right, cherry pick
I
away,
wanna be
bro.
and destroy all those who afflict my soul.
There you're right. That's a good
For I am
old
your
Psalms
servant.
right there.
Because
You can't tell me for 1 minute you sat at work and said, "Oh Lord, destroy those who afflict me."
I'm probably not put it that way,
No?
but
How would you put it into
I don't
Blanco?
know what I've said. But yeah, I'd be like, Lord, handle it. Thank
Handle
you.
it.
Handle it, Lord. This is our sweet Jesus. Just
Sweet
bless
Jesus.
his heart.
Sweet Jesus.
Bless his
country.
heart. Yep.
Bless his little heart.
Bless his heart.
So Southern.
Yes.
Well, you know, one of my models is when Moses goes to the Lord and says, "How can I lead such a stubborn and stiff-necked people?" I love that. In fact, at one church, I will
What
not
was
lie
the
to
response? What was
God's response.
Yeah, what was his good luck?
Keep going. I actually taped that to the back of the door of my office in one of the churches I worked in as a reminder that even Moses had stiff-necked people.
Well,
that
not
he was
here,
trying to
not
lead.
here at Smithfield Baptist, not at all.
But a,
No.
but a church I worked in.
Yeah, the other church.
I put it on the back of the door so I could remind myself as I left my office. Even Moses did this. It's okay. So, speaking about not destroying those who afflict my soul, all right. So let's just take it. How are we doing on our timer? We're okay. So, destroying those who afflict my soul. This is pretty classic Old Testament language of like, Lord, defend me, protect me. And the Old Testament Psalms, particularly, look very much at how God is a judge over the affairs of men and women, and how God is called out by the psalmist to judge between the right and the wrong. And we kind of lost some of that in our New Testament world, and in our own time period. And we see God, kind of just he's lost this sense, I think, in our culture of a judge between those who do right and those who do wrong. But that's not the Old Testament Hebrew point or view of him. It was very much you know what I've done, you know what they've done, now Lord, judge between us. And so you get this language of like, adjudicate this. Do right by me. Do right by this situation. Lord, I want you to jump in and take care of this. So some of this language is from that mindset of, Lord, right this wrong. And the sentence above, and a lot of people don't realize this. I learned a lot about this as I was preaching Ruth now 2 years ago. And this loving kindness word here in verse 12. So we'll back up before the destroying. David says, in your loving kindness. So again, the idea of what we're going to do, you with me, God, is going to be done in love. And this loving kindness is a translation of a word that I've talked a lot about in sermons over the last 2 years, is this Hebrew word called hesed, H-E-S-E-D. I'm not going to put you on the spot. Do you remember me talking about this at all?
I don't.
Okay, good. So, see, you got to communication, you got to communicate.
Yeah.
So, hesed, H-E-S-E-D in the Hebrew. And it is a love that doesn't have, it's a Hebrew word that describes love that doesn't have an English direct translation. So here's your Jeopardy point for tonight, okay? So this Hebrew word doesn't have an English direct translation, but it is love, it's loyalty, it's kindness, it's commitment, it's dedication. It's all of those English words all wrapped up into one. And so when the Hebrews talked about hesed, they were talking about multiple English words all combined together into one term that was the love of God for his people and God's nature, the love of his nature. So in the Greek, we would talk about agape love, which is the love that God has for his people. Well, in Hebrew, it was a little bit, I would argue, it's probably even a little deeper in this hesed, because it is a love that gives of itself without any expectation of return. That's kind of the best layman's term kind of definition. So here in this, at the very end of this psalm, it says, in your love, your devotion, your loyalty, your kindness to me, your dedication to me, your just complete absorption in love of me, Lord, without any expectation in return, is the love that David calls out to defend him and to love him, to guide him, and to teach him. And so we're going to piggyback onto this into understanding God as one who is in his nature capable of doing that. So what do you need to do, Tim? You're digging something up. What you got?
No, I forget sometimes that I had that screen on. So
What
never mind.
screen?
No, I was checking my comments and all, but I forgot that we were live,
We were
on,
live.
on the screen that I was checking comments on. So
So my gift of gab, while I'm gabbing, you're screwing
yeah.
up the screen.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
And everybody's over here like, what have I gotten myself into? Gee.
How much longer do I have tonight?
Nah.
All right, but I think it's a good piggyback into as Avery is studying and learning and growing herself and
I
teaching. She's being taught to be a licensed professional counselor. Where are you getting your schooling?
Liberty University.
Yep. And describe your
Yes.
program a little bit for us.
All right, I'm a grad student at Liberty, and my degree line is clinical mental health counseling. Following this, I plan on continuing. Yes, it's awesome. It's fun. It's a path that God had for me. It's not one that I really sought out myself. So it's different when you're walking in His will. It's just it rolls out differently. So I'm loving it. I'm eyeballs deep in it, and
Awesome.
yeah, wouldn't change it for anything.
There you go. And so you said, I think that you have a class this fall about family systems.
Yes.
We were talking a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had in my mind tonight that we were going to talk a little bit about this idea of God as Father and God loving us and that being a safe relationship where we can ask about God teaching us and growing us and discipling us. And so you and I pre-show had a conversation about what that's like when someone doesn't have a good father figure. And I get this in counseling over the past 20 years where, someone will come and say to me, I have either no or a bad relationship with my earthly father, biological father. And so I have a really difficult time relating to God the Father as one who is safe, who can teach me in a healthy way, who can protect me, who can love me with this Hesed love we're talking about. And so, not to put you on the spot but in 30 seconds, what comes to your mind to say to someone who is struggling with that? Pretty deep, huh? Can you answer 30 seconds or less?
Yeah, I
Tag,
can
no,
in
you're
30
it.
seconds. Really, just building your relationship with Christ. Your relationship up is also your relationship down too.
Okay.
So your earthly relationship with your children, your earthly relationship with your father, but then the Father too. Building a relationship with Christ. I can say my relationship I don't know how much of this but
Sure.
my relationship with my father is pretty much non-existent right now. So I also am in a place where I have a relationship with Christ.
Okay.
So that definitely supersedes and fills that. I don't want to call it a void, but it. I have
gap.
a different.
That gap, maybe? Yeah,
And
okay.
I have a different view on it too than somebody because I have had that experience, as a younger child, and I do have a father figure, my stepdad, who has stepped in greatly.
Great.
Building that relationship with Christ, though, is something you have to separate earthly father from
Right,
Christ because
right.
there's not really a comparison.
Right.
Other than providing, because God provides and, a father provides most of the time. There's just a huge separation.
Sure. And I think that even if you do have a healthy relationship, God is just so much more than any earthly father can be.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
in our theology, in our faith, and so, as Tim and I are the fathers here in the room, we have to acknowledge that we are going to make mistakes and we're going to do things, badly. We're going to say the wrong thing at the wrong time. We're going to act in the wrong way. Tim, of course, has no idea what I'm talking about, right, Mallory? So, all right, so let's dig into this a little bit because I liked what you said about being kind of down and up. So maybe talk about that a little bit more in relationship to, how do our relationships with our parents, perhaps maybe grandparents, perhaps, then kind of filter down, say, through our relationships with our own spouses or our own kids or our brothers and sisters or even maybe other friends. I mean, how does that, how does, in layman's terms, how does all that work out?
Well, as a child, we're very impressionable. So having different experiences, different life experiences, different, really those mold us into who we are. Right. And those could be a good thing and it could be a negative thing. Oftentimes, if it's one way or another, it can be passed on to your children and their children. It's going to make an impact
one way or the other.
Yes. Right. I mean, even thinking about like my grandparents and the way they were raised, and then even when we went to go visit them, the impact that they had on us grandkids.
Sure.
So it does affect the lower generations. But spiritually speaking, having a grandparent that is praying for your children. My kids have a spiritual grandparent.
Okay, cool.
And having her step in and just knowing that she's praying for our kids and is involved, that her family system, her experiences as a child are rolling into generations that don't even, they're not even related to her by blood. Right. Or, she's just literally been a spiritual grandparent. Those family systems can pour into and mold and shape my children or the next generation.
That's awesome.
So thinking about that outside of the box too, what are we doing now that's going to affect the future generations?
Great. Yeah, and you're going exactly where I thought we might go, and I think that's great. Our minds are on the same wavelength there. So this whole show is supposed to be about discipleship, and so what I have been pondering over the past, 8 years, 10 years maybe, it's just how much our church families are impacted by their own biological families, and the voices you hear in your head. I mean, you made the point, it can be good, it can be bad, it can be but it is one way or the other, right? And so the voices we hear in our head from our parents or our grandparents or the people who molded us or shaped us, how that impacts our life now. And as someone who will do professional counseling in the very near future, and someone who gets to pastorally counsel, which is a very different thing. Very intentionally, it's a very different thing. Okay, I don't have Avery's training, and if your pastor says that he does, then you need to find another counselor. Okay, just to be honest with you.
Thank you for acknowledging that, because I don't think people realize and understand the difference in counseling, and the path that I'm taking is a clinical path.
That's right.
Where there's times that I would have to refer out to pastoral counseling, and vice versa.
Yep, absolutely. And the way I handle it, and we'll go on a very slight detour here, is that I always sit down with someone and say, I can walk with you to a certain point, and I will walk with you all the way in terms of loving you and praying for you and wanting to be there with you. But there is a limit now to where I can actually give you the strategies and the things that you need to be healthy. And so, unfortunately, because pastors go into this gig most of the time to help people, we don't know when to stop trying to help, to the point that we start creating problems, okay? And so it takes a great deal of wisdom, maybe. I don't want to make myself sound so smart, but it takes a lot of self-knowledge, at least, to say, okay, now person X, you are beyond my ability to help you, because that's not my background, not my training, okay? Unfortunately, we have some pastors who feel like, well, I've got everything I need to help anybody with any problem. And that's just simply not true. So I'm thankful for people like you, right, who have a much deeper layer of understanding, because that is your calling and that is your gifting. So, there's a very different, unless your pastor is trained in the things you're learning, and there are not that many of them, depending on what you need, person out there listening tonight, it may be a pastor because you just need someone to listen and pray with you and be in your corner. But if it's fairly deep, like, what do I do with my spouse in my relationship, or how do I overcome these past traumatic events?
Right.
Most pastors are simply not capable and trained to be able to do that well, and can end up creating a lot of problems. And in the field, we call that the Messiah complex, where the pastor has now decided that he can be that person's Messiah instead of realizing that he's not Jesus, and he needs to refer that person out before he does more damage than good. Tag, your turn.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, we've had this conversation before, and I'm so thankful that you have the knowledge behind you and the understanding of the difference. And there's, just for people who don't understand, the clinical aspect of things reaches more into like traumas specific. That's more my jam, really, but reaches into traumas, reaches into like different bipolar complex, different diagnoses with depression, a little deeper than what you would be able to
Right,
do.
absolutely,
And then we have
absolutely.
different treatments that we would be able to utilize.
You come to me
Then
telling me you're
you-
depressed, and I
so-
say grab a donut and Dr. Pepper and read the Bible, you're good. Right? I mean, that's my
And
solution.
then we're going to look at CBT. So, two different angles of looking at things.
you'll be fat and happy. But I will pray with you. I'll pray hard with you after I give you that donut.
And you know what? That's another thing too, is you can find an LPC who is a Christian
That's right.
that
That's right.
will tap into what, respectfully understand where you're at with your walk with Christ.
Right.
And that spiritual pillar is really a pillar that's needed for healing.
Absolutely.
So if you're seeking counseling, professional counseling on any level, feel free to use that as make sure your counselor is aware of that, because professionalism, we need to honor whatever that is, and
Absolutely.
that's
So
what
I'm gonna throw a hardball one to you guys.
Yep,
Would
all
y'all?
Oh boy.
Would that be a recommendation as three Christians sitting here if another Christian was pursuing a psychiatrist or a psychologist, whatever?
A psychiatry. Well, psychiatry is your medical doctor
Yeah.
piece.
Right.
Right. So that's going to be.
Psychologist. Would y'all
Psychologist.
recommend them to pursue one that may have Christian foundations or what? So. Not even, there you go.
Yeah.
A little hardball there.
Yeah.
Well,
Great question.
I mean, I certainly do. So when I refer out, and again, when I get to that point with someone, and I start my times with people saying, we're going to get to a point probably pretty quickly where I'm going to need to send you to someone who can help you at a much deeper level. So I always try to refer out to a Christian, organization who does this. Just recently, I have sent and referred to a local pastor who is both a pastor and an LPC, and have heard really good things back from my church family members who've gone to talk to him. So that's another example of me just understanding that I have limitations in that area, but there are other good pastors, as you mentioned, who do have that additional training and who have seen that as part of their calling and really do that. So I've had a really wonderful experience, been able to successfully kind of hand off in all the positive ways of people who might be needing a lot more than what I can do to someone who's kind of like a combination of you and I
Right.
over time.
In school, it's kind of interesting because in school, when I went to my last intensive last year, there was a huge amount of people in there who were pastors that literally understood that they could only go to a certain point,
Sure.
including my professor that was actually teaching that.
Okay.
He was a pastor and he retired and wanted to be able to help people more, but realized he couldn't with
Right.
just the pastoral counseling aspect of it. And he's taken a different path and he's teaching and
Cool.
yeah, we're
There's
so
another
it's
master's
awesome.
for you, Patrick.
Oh yeah, so I need more
So-
books to read.
But to answer your question, I wanted to tap in on that one.
Yep.
To answer your question, I think having a network within the mental health field and knowing who is who, so that when we do refer out, if we know that a client has
Certain beliefs.
exactly, you can kind of point them in that direction. As for me and my family, I would always encourage Christian. I would always, because that's the foundation of really the healing.
And school, and I guess you doing at Liberty, do they intertwine what you're learning and how to be? You're shaking your head, yes.
Christian
Yeah,
worldview.
that's why I'm there.
Yeah, Christian worldview. That's right.
That's why I personally chose going to Liberty over another public school.
Yeah. And there are I mean, not to rain on Liberty's parade because I'm sure they appreciate the plug, but there are also other schools.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think Gordon Conwell Evangelical
Regent do one?
Seminary. I think Regent
Regent does
look
have
here
it.
more locally to us in Smithfield. I'm pretty sure Trinity. I think they're up in Chicago. I'm pretty sure where Josh is getting his doctorate there at
BYU.
Fuller. BYU would have a unique take on that. You wouldn't have to worry about them telling you to
Wow.
take caffeine or anything like that out there.
Wasn't expecting that one.
No, because it's only me, because I'm messing.
And we're in the Southern Baptist world here in what we do. So several of our Southern Baptist seminaries have kind of those degrees. So again, not take away anything from Liberty because that's pretty popular here in this part of the country for sure, and they have a good program. But there are other places as well. So my only point is that there is a need.
Yep.
And that people are tapping in, and it's a solid thing. So if tonight, here the practical piece for this tonight is if you're in a place where you need to have something addressed, if there's an area of your life where you want God to teach you, but you've got something in your background or a trauma or an issue or something that's going to keep you from growing, then there are other places for you to tap in. And sometimes, as much as it's near and dear to me, your local pastor is not the best person for that. It's just the reality of it, guys.
You jumped the gun.
Sorry, dude,
That's
what you
like
got?
my closing question.
Great, fire away. Ask it anyway. What you got?
Well, I was going to say, no, because we're not to the close. We still got about 15, 20 minutes. But I guess we'll just go into this and it'll lead to other things. So who do you recommend? I mean, do you recommend a Christian to reach out to their church to see if they don't have any person that they know to go to see if, find an example, like you said, you might have that pastor.
Right.
Do you recommend church members to reach out to to the pastor to see what help
absolutely.
they can do?
Yeah, I mean, and most pastors, will try to have kind of some resources, like you were talking about, Avery, that they can say, hey, go talk to this group, this Christian group, or go talk to this person, or go plug into this area. And most of us try to kind of have some of those resources for people. It was very hard to find during COVID. So I'll just kind of confess, I'm a little bit behind my own resource list in this area because I haven't only been here about 4.5 years now, and COVID really so limited things that I have found this one local pastor who I hear has done a very nice job. There is actually here in our town a Christian counseling group right on Main Street has gotten going good.
Yep.
And I do know that there are some local resources. So I would encourage both pastors and laymen to have those people that they know they can refer to. And I do think Christian is important. Answer your question, bro?
Yeah, but
you got a part B?
Well, I do have a part B.
Let's go.
But all right, so this would be a good one for Avery.
Good.
So Avery, what
I can
would
take
you
a word.
tell somebody, especially men, because it just comes to mind with men that you're told that you're weak to go to a psychiatrist, you're weak and you shouldn't do that, do counseling. So what would you tell a person that just says, "Oh, I'm embarrassed to go to this. I don't want to do this." How would you kind of coach them? And
You know what though? I don't see it as an embarrassing thing.
Well-
I don't. I could see how others would feel it be embarrassing, but I really think that's a culture thing. And that could be a family culture, really I can tell you within we are very much an individualistic culture, but within a lot of the collectivist cultures, Asian, the Latino community, they're very family oriented and they have relationships. And honestly, that goes to relationships. Having relationships with people, it makes a huge difference in individuals. A lot of people in, our culture will go to seek counseling because they don't have relationships with people. They don't have that mentorship from elders. They don't have that pulling back into that family system concept.
Right.
You really, like the verse 10, how you were talking about teach me. Okay. So taking that, you know, it really takes somebody outside of the box to be taught.
Right.
And so, as far as men are concerned, sometimes they have to be completely vulnerable. You know, you have to get to a point where it's like the last resort.
Yeah, rock bottom, as it were, right? Yeah.
Really, and that's when it's harder.
That's what I'm saying. A
So
lot of
if
times,
you can attack things
if
a
you
little
can get-
sooner, then it doesn't have to get to rock bottom. And as people, as it's becoming more popular and more accepted, that's hopefully the culture of that's going to change.
And that's a good one, and that's kind of what I was kind of leaning towards, because I think any person, man or woman, but coming from a man, they should know that, hey, get there, go talk to this person,
Yeah.
and figure out what's going on. And there should be no embarrassment. It should be something it's a positive thing, because you're trying to fix something that is possibly not working, broken, and all.
Well, yeah, and I'd like to jump into, because I think
Yeah.
that's great, Tim, about, we talked a little bit about like breaking cycles.
Yep.
And about how, in families, the voices we hear and things like that, we get into the cycles, and especially as guys, if we think that, I've got to have it all together, I got to be strong, I got to be a provider, I don't need anybody else to teach me or anybody to talk to me, or I don't need anybody else. We lose the opportunity to break the cycle. And so I think part of the discipleship I wanted to hit on tonight for our listeners is that, I would challenge you to think about and kind of process, and it takes time. It takes a lot of time to process the relationships or lack thereof
Yes.
that you have, and the impact those have on your life. The voices in your head, as it were, that you hear, whenever you do something or make a decision. Do you hear like, oh, my dad would call me stupid if I did that, or oh, my mom would say I'm the laziest person ever if I did that. And I'm just making up examples, right? So think about the impact those generations in your upbringing have had, and we want to learn through discipleships to be taught how to break the cycle. Like let that
Right.
that difficult or hurtful or traumatic even experience stop with you. And don't pass that on to your kids or the people you mentor or the people you pray for. I mean, you take that as a challenge to be taught so that you don't repeat for the next generation. I mean, one of the best things we can do is every generation be better than the one before. And it doesn't have to be huge critique on the one that came before. It's just that we're all trying to get better. So jump in.
Yeah, we want our kids to stand on our shoulders.
Absolutely.
And if we are falling and have issues and don't have relationship and have not been discipled and are not properly, discipling our children and those in the next generation, then what are we doing?
Right. And how are
Really?
we changing
So-
the cycle and where we are, right?
Right. So another way too is having relationship. I know this is something that I'll throw this out there. My husband is kind of he facilitates a like a fellowship group, and which is a wonderful opportunity for men to get together and just build relationships, because those relationships is what's going to be, you have a relationship with somebody, they're going to be more receptive to hearing what you have to say than some stranger with letters behind their name,
Right.
who could probably tell them the same thing at the very beginning before they actually have to be seen.
Right.
So relationship for, up and down, like I've just recently been convicted myself about who am I discipling?
Sure.
A couple weeks ago, I was at lunch with some girls and it kind of came out like, who am I discipling? I'm 41 years old. I have 5 children. There is somebody in a season just barely behind me or,
Sure.
even a decade behind me that I can be discipling.
Right.
Same thing for my teenagers. There's somebody just behind them that they can be discipling.
Right. Absolutely.
So we are, as a community, wanting the elders to disciple us, yet we need to think about who we are discipling.
Well, they say, right, you learn the most when you teach,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So, it's hard to, teach
Yeah.
other people if you don't know what you're talking about. You can only fake it till you make
Put you in
it
the
for so long,
rhetorical,
right? Right.
the rhetorical
exactly.
stage of development, real quick.
Yeah, right. And you had even mentioned some of Erickson's stages and stuff like that when we were talking.
Yeah.
Just that. And I want to jump on this because we talked a little bit about this, and our conversation didn't really get here tonight. But I just want to throw this out because I don't think people realize this. Okay.
Okay.
And so, jump on this or not, but I just want to make sure everybody understands this. Okay. when related to discipleship and development and trauma and issues in our society, I was visiting a friend of mine in Oklahoma, and on my trip, we swung by and saw him. It was awesome. It was great to see him. He was from seminary. And he talked about how a lot of the area that he was in Oklahoma is being supported by what he called parasitic institutions. And he was talking about particular social organizations in our society that thrive by essentially being a parasite on people. And the one specific one we were talking about, and I'm not getting political here, I'm just simply stating, the one we were specifically talking about was just the marijuana, the growth of the marijuana industry, and the incredible amount of money that is in the marijuana industry. And so what I wanted to put out there tonight, we're talking about trying to break disciples and discipleship, break cycles and discipleship, is that when you become addicted to a substance, whether it's alcohol or drugs or any particular mind-altering thing, your body, your mind, you stop maturing. Mm-hmm. You stop at that point. You emotionally stop, and I've seen this in my own ministries where you would be looking at the face of a 34-year-old, but he's actually emotionally a 16-year-old.
Yeah,
because that's when he started drinking and became addicted. Okay, and so I bring that up tonight because, again, those cycles, those things in our lives or in our past have a tremendous impact on the way we see the world, how we interact with God, how we interact with each other. Yeah. If your father's an alcoholic and emotionally he is an 18-year-old, then yes, it would strike me as something that would be very difficult for him to have been a healthy father to model for you a heavenly father. Is that fair? Jump in.
Yeah. So with Eric's stages of development, Erik Erikson's stages of development, you basically have to get past one stage to move on to the next. So like you were saying, if substance use is in the way and you do stop developing, that really just hinders you from developing, but your children and the next generation is not able to see you get beyond that point. Right. What's happening to them?
That's right.
So what's happening to our society as a whole, when you look at it from the big picture,
sure,
developmentally, if they're growing by age but not by maturity.
Yeah, we're getting wrinkles and less hair, but emotionally, we're still 18 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to see, and that's something that once we can identify that, having relationships with other people too, so that if you find in your family line that somebody has not developed, you can kind of pull towards somebody else who can disciple you and love on you and help you get beyond that stage of development, right. So you can see something different.
And so that person ultimately has got to finish a stage before they can get to the
right.
next one, and the dependency stops them at that stage. Is that basically what we're saying?
The dependency is going to throw a kink in
all of it, right?
The whole thing. Yeah, okay. Really.
Yeah, and again, looking at all of this and like kind of the challenge to have a healthy relationship with God our Father, and realizing that we all have, it used to be called the black sheep in the family, right? And some of us have a whole flock, never mind just one or two of them. And
some of us are the black sheep.
Right, exactly right. So teach us a lot, please. Please, Lord, teach us. But the challenge, a part of discipleship is becoming a greater discipleship of Jesus. And if these experiences, these traumas, these relationships are holding you back from becoming a greater disciple, then these are things you need to address head on, either through your own processing, through study of the Bible, through prayer, teach me, O Lord, or more official, clinical kind of let us bring some Christian tools along to help you do that. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Well, that's a good point, because I was going to bring you up on something. So, what would you say to somebody that just is, they're Christian, but they're just mad because things just haven't been going away, and they're like just shaking their fist. God, why is this? I mean, what would you tell somebody that kind of could help them get back on track?
Sure. You want to take this, or you want me to?
I would dig into what's causing that.
From that
from
point,
my perspective,
yes.
I would dig into really, let's explore why you feel this way.
Why are you angry?
Is it related to a parental example or a parental figure? You know, what is causing that anger? I would take it more from that angle.
What would you do from a pastor angle?
Well, I think for me, the first thing I would have to do is try to learn a little bit more. I mean, it's a pretty broad stroke there.
That was.
But I get your point. Like, there's just anger at, is it anger at the loss of a loved one? Is it the anger of a bad childhood? Is it the anger of a specific trauma? Is it the anger of because, you were abused at the church, God forbid? Is it, so depending on what it is, would kind of highlight, which Bible passage I would need to think about, or even like how to pray for them, or, theologically what they were struggling with. Again, not having the clinical piece of it, I would refer back to the biblical piece of, how can I pray for you? How can you think about God in a healthier way? Can we just communicate and build relationship?
So anger sometimes could just be one symptom of a bigger picture.
Yeah.
So exploring what else is there? Is this, are there some manic depressive? Are we looking at, there's so many different directions that you can go with it. So seeing the individual as a whole, and understanding what their influences are, their life, their normal patterns. Is there depression involved in that? There's so many different ways that you can go. So
bipolar,
really,
that's a mess. Yeah. Bipolar is a difficult one. So, I appreciate that, Avery, and I think that's where someone needs to kind of discern at what level they need that kind of help. Because I'm very trained to give you a theological answer, give you a biblical example, pray with you, be a safe place for you to cry and come closer to God, hopefully. But most pastors are not trained to be able to dig into how to heal that depth of trauma or loss or whatever the case may be, and certainly not the depression pieces. It's usually beyond most pastors.
And I am a Christian counselor as well for women and children, and through AACC. So taking it from the Christian counselor perspective and not the clinical aspect of things. Again, relationship, having relationship with people and being able to break down some of those walls and understand who they are, what's causing that, what is happening while that anger is happening. So is there something specific that we can pray about? Is there something that I can kind of just be encouraging that individual throughout the week, discipleship wise?
Sure.
Knowing like they're dealing with something. I read something and forward it to them, having that relationship, and then they can call and open up and say, hey, this is what's going on.
Right.
There's a huge, when you're looking at counseling and you're looking at anger, it can go so many different directions.
Yeah, depending on where the
And
person is.
that's the beauty of really having so many people in this field and being able to help others.
But I wanted, and I was coming back to this because I wanted to really mention, especially from a man's standpoint, having what Max does with the fellowship, the men fellowship. I think that is extremely important for any man to have access to that type of group, because we, especially you two, will probably know that suicides in men are a lot higher than women and all, and they tend to do things that they shouldn't, drinking and all. But having that group, and I like to always say, hey, you got yourself. It's more of, because men's going to hold each other to a certain level of, hey, peer-to-peer accountability here, and they're going to hold each other to that level, but also being able to go to, for example, I go to Max and just pour out my heart to him, and it'd be a lot easier than going to maybe a doctor or somebody that I don't know. So,
And that's why relationship is
it's very
important.
Yes. So,
Yeah, that's right.
Here, and here.
Right.
That's a good
To
point.
both directions. That's why.
Horizontal
it's
and vertical, right?
Yes. Yeah.
so.
Yeah, if I could add, because we're going to be wrapping up here in just a couple minutes,
between you two, my cords.
I know,
will
they
do
keep
something
falling
with
off
these,
here.
Yes.
You need
Have
a
to wrap
clip,
them up.
like put a little clip there.
You can't see, but we've got these cords here. We're trying to
They're both
navigate.
Still can't see. There you
They
go.
keep falling,
Very
yeah.
fidgety with them.
Yeah, they're like, it's good. I can't get the right camera. There we go. I would add, I just got back from this conference where it's just surrounded by a lot of what we call executive pastors, so pastors who handle all the admin stuff in the church. And, it's been a good, I think this is my 6th conference or so over my career, and it's a good time to learn and to grow. And it was one thing I would add, a lot of people don't realize, is this kind of hit home to me in one of the speakers was just talking about the kind of the state of pastors in this country, especially coming out of COVID, talking about relationships, talking about those kinds of things. And so, I will say for the record, I serve a really great church, and we have some really great relationships, my family, with families in the church. But I would just say for those of you who aren't part of Smithfield Baptist, well, those who are part of Smithfield Baptist too, just recognize that highlighted again to me in some of these breakout sessions is just how lonely the pastors in our country are. And study after study shows that our pastors are very, very lonely. In fact, the stats are astounding. So, pray for your pastor. I'll take all the prayers I can get, but wherever you are, whatever church you attend, pray for your pastor, because that is talking about a relationship situation where there's really no one you can really truly confide in within your church for many people, for many pastors, I'm trying to say. The hesitancy to go and talk to other members, so there's really nowhere to turn a lot of times. The need for the pastor to have that support. So, again, just this conference really highlighted to me that our pastors are extremely unhealthy and emotionally really fragile right now. Coming out of COVID, coming out of all those issues, we can blame COVID all day long, but the reality is it's a tough time. So for your church, pray for your pastor, because he needs it more than you realize, okay? And I'll take as many as I can get.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, please, jump in.
And families too, the
Absolutely.
pastors' families, because that's something I think they get kind of lost and
Yeah.
forgotten about, I guess
Yeah,
is the best way to put it. I have 2 dear friends that are in ministry that I've seen just a different side of it, and I've been able to pray for them a little differently because I have relationships with them.
Right.
So that's, and
piece.
family members are so important. Yeah.
Well, because you've told me that, and you've done your best not to be that pastor, but
Right.
you said that most pastors, maybe back in the day, and all, but their family came secondary to the church.
Well,
and all.
that was a major problem for the generations before me, and this started to change when the seminary started to take it seriously. So I would say me and maybe just a little bit younger, the seminary started really stressing the importance of the family. That's where the whole PK, pastor's kid thing comes from. It's just it is tough to be a pastor's kid because you're always in a glass house, and it's hard. So a lot of pastors have started to try, in my generation and younger, to really protect their kids and protect their family and place them at a little bit higher in the pecking chain, because they just, seminaries and other pastors started to see what damage was being done by these pastors who were always at the beck and call of the church to the detriment of their own families. Now, part of the call is to be available and to do those things, but there's a line where you start to hurt your own family. You're no longer a steward of the gifts God's given you with your own kids and your own spouses and your own families, and there's a line there that shouldn't be crossed. So I think it is hard, but it's just necessary. And I don't think that the older generations put enough emphasis on that. And quite honestly, the church's expectation for those generations
is high.
was completely unreasonable.
Yeah, it was.
Completely unreasonable. My grandfather was a Baptist pastor for 48 years. And my dad can tell you some pretty tough stories about that. And so having kind of lived that, I was very determined to the best of my ability that my kids wouldn't have those stories. And then they love church and they're God is planting seeds, and it's awesome. But it's a continual effort. And I think that the church's expectations of the pastors were just so unreasonable. So as much as you laugh about vacation and stuff, I had a seminary professor tell me. I mean, he looked at the entire class. The only thing I remember the guy telling me, because he was a bit of a nut anyway, but I remember him looking at the entire class and said, if a church does not offer you 5 weeks of vacation, do not go to that church, because they will abuse you in all other ways too. And I didn't listen to him, and I should have, because this is the first church that has given me what I would call an adequate amount of vacation for the highs and lows and the emotional toil this job takes.
Yeah.
And that's not sorry. I'm just saying. I mean, I'm not crying in my coffee here. I don't drink coffee, but I'm not crying my Dr. Pepper here. I'm just saying. that I worked for many years with 2 weeks off, and after about 3 or 4 years of that, you're useless. You're just useless. And people don't realize, just to defend my fellow pastors, that like you come in a day, and just any given day, and you're dealing with everything from like planning a wedding with a happy new couple to crying with a mother, at the bedside table. Now, those are extreme examples, but people don't understand the highs and lows and emotions of dealing with where people are in their life. And that takes an emotional toll. And then you get home and you have no emotional ability left for your own family.
Gotcha.
So in looking at the family systems and obviously taking that down into the next generation who your kids aren't the typical PKs.
Sure.
We can just say that.
Yeah.
No,
Some of my dear friends were PKs. My kids have friends that were PKs. And I have to say, even from my generation, like you're saying, to this generation, it's not the same.
No.
And fortunately, we're changing that.
dynamics.
Yeah. The quote unquote, what the PK falls into. It's not normal. Yeah. But you need that vacation.
Absolutely.
Your family needs that vacation too, because
Absolutely.
they need you.
That's right.
So, I'm looking at it from the family perspective, and it's serving you as a person, but then it's also serving the family because they're able to just turn off and
That's right.
and enjoy you.
And I'm being able to be present.
Yeah.
That's right. And this church does a fabulous job of not, like Shannon and I were talking, our office manager and I were talking about it. I mean, the church didn't call me and didn't gave me that time. And I will also say, just to prop up this church, and the reason I could say these kinds of things is because I'm in a safe environment in this church in these kinds of areas. But many leaders in this church who've had positions that would oversee me have often said over the past 4.5 years, your family, you need time, or your family comes first, have been very, very supportive. So one of the reasons I can talk about this kind of stuff so openly is that it's no critique of the current place I serve. So that's what it was.
Patrick, do you think, and without going too far into this, because I think, do you think it over time it creates resentment for you as the pastor towards the church when if he sees this thing?
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't see that being any good outcome coming from that at all, and all, because I see it creating resentment for you, and then I see your family's is resenting you, and
right.
I mean, I just see
and
it
resenting the
snowballing.
church. I mean, we recently have PKs, right? Just broad brushstrokes here is because kids started to, or resented what the church was doing within their family structure and family systems.
Yep.
And dad always had, in that generation, dad always had to leave their birthday party to go take care of something at church, or always had to cancel the vacation short because they had to go take care of something at church or whatever. So the kids is, an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 5-year-old is like, what is the deal with this? I can't even have a birthday party.
So one more thing.
Yeah.
What kind of letter do you think Paul would have written to handle that situation?
I think Paul would have been pretty to the point. I mean, Paul's...
Stop it.
Yeah. I think Paul would have been pretty to the point. And again, churches are getting very much better at this, I believe. But there's still some holdouts. There's still some 2 weeks is good enough for everybody else, right? Why isn't it good enough for you? It's like, well, there's a lot maybe you don't realize, and that's okay. You're not called to realize it. Maybe there's a lot you don't realize. So, just pray for your pastor. Pray for your pastor.
And their family.
And their
Miss
family.
Avery,
And their family.
I always like to give our guests the last thing. So whatever you have, if you have a statement or if you have anything, all right, I'll make it easy for you.
Yeah,
then.
make it easy.
What would you tell somebody that just is they? I know we touched a little bit on this, but go more into it. What would you tell somebody that they need help, but they don't know where to go, and how could they go about doing that? let's even say locally and outside.
Okay, so say locally right here in the church. I mean, the pastor would be a good first point of contact so that we can filter out, like, is this a spiritual battle? Is this something more?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, good point.
That's from the Christian, biblical perspective, that's a good first point. Reaching out. There's lots of even Christian counseling here locally, Smithfield Christian Counseling right here on Main Street. Stepping Stones in Churchland. They have it in Franklin. There's so many different Christian facilities here that you can reach out to for counseling as well.
But so beyond even Smithfield, though, not to interrupt you,
Yeah.
the pattern would still be the same. Like
Yeah.
your local pastor in your church, who hopefully you have a relationship. If not, they would still be happy to talk to you.
And even before the pastor, really, who in your Sunday school class? Who within your
small group.
Yeah,
Sure.
like reach out to them first, because it might just be a relational thing. It might just be something that you have to talk out. I have a dear friend that fortunately I can bounce just words off of her, and that's all I need is just to process it verbally.
With another person, right?
Yeah.
And most people I know in these small groups, they want to help.
Yeah.
They want to do everything they can to fix the problem for you.
So first level, your local Christian support group, essentially.
Yeah.
Next group would be raising the bar a little bit of like getting more towards professional help or professional
Yep.
insight into what you're dealing with. And again, wherever you are, there should be a Google search for that, which should turn up, plenty of options. So, one of the things I tell people, you can jump in on this too, is that, if you go to a counselor and it's not a good fit,
Find another one.
then find another one,
Exactly.
right? I mean, it's like, going to a church like, oh, this isn't a good church, I'm never going to church
Exactly.
again. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, first of all, we're all sinners and no church is the same. So if you go and you don't like the person, you don't click, then go find the next person.
Exactly.
Don't stop there and don't use it as an excuse.
Just like people who don't like their doctor.
Right.
If you don't like one doctor or you want a second opinion on something, it's not any different than
That's right.
finding somebody else.
Absolutely.
And
or
it's
have a
okay.
Dr. Pepper and your problems go away.
Okay.
All right.
I meant medically, not emotionally.
So
We'll get you on bone broth one day.
they said it's really good.
My
It is
dead
good,
body.
daily.
Over my
It
dead
is.
body, which may happen sooner than later. at this point.
I know that bone broth happens in your household, so
Yeah, it's
I know.
clandestine. But I took us off the topic, but that is a good point. Wherever you are, whatever you're dealing with, go get the resources. Don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. Make yourself healthier. Break those cycles. Find someone like Avery. Talk with someone in your community like me, and get where you need to be healthier, you, and break those cycles.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Avery. But I want you to touch base on.
Yep.
We're about to get real busy on a couple things
We are.
with Bible school,
Yep.
Awanas.
Yep.
When's Wednesday night starting back? So I want you to take that.
Yeah, good question.
And dinner.
In fact, I got to double check. I believe it is. Let me pull out my handy dandy phone here. I believe it is September 13th.
Okay, so about a month, a little bit about a month
so
out.
it's going to be that first Wednesday night that Awana begins, and I don't believe it's not the first week after Labor Day. There, it's the 13th here locally is when we'll start our Awana program. When I'll start Wednesday night Bible studies.
Can you give us a
all
little
that.
taste? What are you starting?
Yeah, we're actually going to complete eventually over a couple of weeks 1 Samuel, because we had begun 1 Samuel last year.
Okay.
And then we'll get into 2 Samuel. We're actually going Wednesday night going through a walk through some of the historical books of the Old Testament. I love history. The class seems to like history. At least they pretend like they like history. And we have a good time. So we walked through David and Saul, and we kind of left off
Is
there.
it too late to sign up, register for Bible school?
You show up, we'll put you to work.
We'll put you.
Well, that's
not
not
to work,
completely
but no,
true.
I'm
That's not
saying
completely true.
if I want to bring my kids there.
Oh, yeah,
we-
yeah.
we
No,
ready
yeah,
to-
yeah.
okay.
Bring on your kids. If you want to volunteer, we need to put you through some paces to make sure everybody's safe. But if you want to bring your kids on, we'd love you to pre-register. It helps prepare, but come on.
And is it too late to sign up for Awanas?
Absolutely no. We haven't even really started that part yet. That's kind of an after VBS push.
Okay. All
So
right.
yeah, no, absolutely. And all that
I know
should be
it's on
our
the
website
website to register for
Yeah, all
Awanas.
it is on the website. Locally, if you're not here in Smithfield area, look for an Awana program if you've got kids in your area.
Highly
It's a
recommend
it's a
it.
good program. All
Yes.
3 of us here have been
Yes, love
really
it.
blessed by Awana. So look locally for a church that's doing that program. It's great for the kiddos. Goes from what ages, Avery? Off the top of your head?
I mean, we have puggles and cubbies, so like 3,
Yeah,
4.
they're really little.
Yeah,
Basically-
all the
Judah
way
was
through
in
high
Puggles.
school.
Judah
All the
was
way through
Puggles.
We
12th
have
grade,
it all
right?
the way through high
Yeah.
school. Yep.
Yeah, so most churches will be trying to make the effort to go all the way through. So check that out in your community. And yeah, we got a lot going on. And before you guys know it, we'll be singing Christmas carols.
I know we will.
It won't take
I'm
long
ready.
at all. Yeah, bring
I'm
it on,
ready.
right? Bring it on. All right, so we did not pray to start
Nope,
because
but
we
we're
were so
gonna pray
excited
out.
to
I'm
be
gonna
here.
say-
So we're gonna pray it out.
Yep.
All right, let's do it. Lord, we thank you. We thank you for all that you are. We thank you that you love us. It's at such a deep, deep level that we can't even fully describe with words, but in such a way that we can turn to you to be taught. We can turn to you to grow. We can turn to you to be healthier. We can trust you because of your love for us. We can trust that you have our ultimate good in mind, and we can trust in your loving kindness of us. So, Lord, we praise your name for that. I lift up those who've listened to this tonight, those who will listen to it this upcoming week. Lord, I just pray that if there's anyone struggling, that they would reach out to their core of support, or they would reach out to those who can help them. Lord, we pray that you would, in discipleship, give us wisdom to break the cycles in our life so that we can help others and help the next generation to be even better than we are, that you would give us the wisdom to find the strength to become more of the people you've called us to be. We thank you for our local church, Smithfield Baptist, and we thank you for the work around the country and literally around the globe that takes place every week in your churches that are building your kingdom. So bless us this week, Lord. May it be one of discipleship. May we grow. May we become more the people you've called us to be. May it be for your glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
God bless. Take care. Thank you, Avery.
Thank you.
Have a good one.